Turtle, Frog, and Puffin, all of them helping the Swan. Hello, I'm XRTT, and today I will be talking about The Swan Princess, a series of films on the occasion of the 30th anniversary of the first one. So let's begin. As I said, the premiere of this recording marks 30 years since the premiere of the first film in the series. But the story of Swan Princess itself is much older, like over 100 years older. Or maybe even more, because researchers speculate on what earlier tale the story told in the ballet Swan Lake is based on. Piotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky created his musical work in years 1875 to 76, and in 1877 it premiered in Moscow, performed by the Bolshoi Ballet. Who was responsible for the plot, the libretto, as far as I can find out, is not certain. Various names and suspicions are thrown around. I will not dive into that. After all, I'm supposed to talk about something much newer. And the story of this began in 1994, when the first film in the series, simply titled Swan Princess, premiered. The director was Richard Leach. He was also a producer. In this double role, he acted for all the films in the series. For some, including the first one, he was also the writer. The plot is relatively simply and, as far as I've read the ballet descriptions, quite consistent with original source. In this film, we learn the story of Odette, who will be the titular Swan Princess. We also see Derek, her future husband. We can see them from the moment when they are little to their adulthood, when they are actually supposed to get married. But a negative character, Sir Rodbard, stands in the way. He wanted to take over the kingdom of King William, Derek's father, but when King found out about this, he banished him. He returns and kills the king and casts a spell on Odette, which transforms her into a swan during the day. The only time and place when she can take her human form is Swan Lake, when the moonbeams fall on him. During her stay in this location, she befriends two animals. A turtle that she introduced as Lorenzo Trugalong, but he's always carried speed outside of this one scene, and a French frog named Jean Bob. These two are soon joined by an Irish puffin named very originally Lieutenant Puffin. The presence and role of these animals is the biggest difference from the source material, I think. Of course, everything ends well, the negative character is defeated and the hero's life happily ever after. Well, alas until the next film, but more on that in a moment. In addition to the characters already mentioned, this part also introduces several others that will appear on the screen in many or in all sequels. Most notably Odette's mother, Queen Huberta, her valet, Lord Rogers, Derek's friend, Bromley, and Bridget. Sir Robart's assistant will be a positive character in the next movies. This film is not a Disney production, but in a sense, it has Disney roots. Because the Richard Leach worked for Disney, he directed their films such as The Fox and the Hound in 1981 and The Black Cauldron in 1985. But he was fired, so he created his own studio. Most of his employees also had Disney background. He was inspired to create Swan Princess by, among others, the success of another former Disney creator, Don Bluth, about whose films such as Land Before a Time or All Dogs Go to Heaven, due to the turtle elements, I will definitely talk more about on this channel. The first film premiered in cinemas on November 18 and unfortunately turned out to be a flop. A big problem were the other films that also hit theaters at the time, especially the return of The Lion King to the screens, which Brian Lowry, in his article for Variety, directly cast as sabotage. However, it didn't kill the franchise, but later films were produced in the direct-to-video form. Looking at the awards, the only more famous one for which the film was nominated was the 52 Golden Globe Awards in the category Best Original Song for the song Far Longer Than Forever, which I personally like a lot. However, it didn't win the award, losing again to Lion King, from which two songs were nominated, of which Can You Feel the Love Tonight won. Personally, I consider Be Prepared to be the best song from The Lion King, but that's a completely different topic. Judging the movie for the turtle element, speed plays a large role in many scenes, so it's a nice turtle movie. After 3 years, in 1997, we got a sequel, the second film, The Swan Princess, Escape from Castle Mountain, also known as The Swan Princess and the Secret of the Castle in Europe. As I mentioned, it was released direct to video. The action takes place a year after the first film. The plot is very similar in many moments. The main opponent is Clavius, the former partner of the main bad guy from the first movie. He wants to recover the forbidden arts located in the castle. He kidnaps Queen Huberta. When animals come to her rescue, we have an interesting character development for Jean Bob, who doesn't really want to do anything heroic, but when necessary, he saves the day, dying in the process. But he survives, because he is resurrected by magic, of course. The creator pictures are sticking to the title, so Odette is transformed into a swan again. The turtle part of this movie is cool. Speed has a bit of a part in the action, and I also noticed one mistake with him in the animation. In the scene that you can see on the screen, you can see that Puffin is riding on Speed's shell. After a moment, we see only Speed, and in the next scene, he is with Puffin again. The next film came much faster. After a year, in 1998, it was titled The Swan Princess 3, The Mystery of the Enchanted Treasure, but it was also known as The Swan Princess, The Mystery of the Enchanted Kingdom. Plot-wise, we have a very similar situation again. Forbidden arts are what the evil person desires. This time it is Zelda, who collaborated with Sir Robert. She even believes that she created him as an evil person. But of course, he betrayed her. Together they created the notes that she now desires. Typically, as a result of the action of the negative character, Odette is transformed into a swan. Less standard is that she dies, but she comes back to life. This scene brings to mind a ribbon of a phoenix rather than a swan, but well. The turtle element is okay. We have here, among other scenes, Speed styled as a Rambo. After the teaser part, the series went on the silence for quite some time. We didn't get the next film until 2012, 14 years after the third one. A very important and easy to spot difference is the fact that where the first three films were animated using traditional 2D hand-drawn techniques, these and all parts after this were created entirely with CGI animation. The film states that this is Odette's first Christmas with Derek without her father, but in the second film they celebrated a year together, which strongly suggests that there must have been a Christmas during that year. So if it matters to anyone, chronologically this film should be placed between the first and second, but I strongly suspect that this wasn't some kind of planned move and just happened that way. I was slightly grumbling and point out that the previous films are sometimes a bit too similar and you want quests. In this part, Rockwart returns as an opponent, this time in the form of a ghost. He wants to destroy the spirit of Christmas. And of course, Odette is transformed into a swan again. I really like the fact that Bridget seemingly betrays Derek, but it turned out that she doesn't. The fact that Derek respects her and remembers something as simple as her name, and the bad guy doesn't even bring himself to do that is enough. I liked it. Because at first, I was a bit sad by how easily she changed sides. We also have a solid reference to Star Wars here. Speed's participation is quite standard. You can see him as Santa Claus, among other things. We got the next film 2 years later, in 2014, titled The Swan Princess, A Royal Family Tale, and it's quite a breath of fresh air. The main opponent is again Forbidden Arts, but this time quite literally, as a conscientious dark force that using some trickery has influenced the tribe of flying squirrels. As part of its action aimed at Odette, the father of a girl named Alice dies, so Derek and Odette adopt her. So we get a new heroine who will have a significant role in many of the future movies. We also get another new character here, one of the flying squirrels named Scully. He dies at the end, sacrificing himself, but he returns as a ghost in the next parts. This is the film's film to abandon the idea of turning Odette into a swan in every movie. The turtle participation is quite standard. After another 2 years, in 2016, we got the next part, The Swan Princess, Princess Tomorrow, Pirate Today. Derek and Odette are put on the sidelines a bit. The main roles are played by the aforementioned new character, Princess Alice. A big role have also Lord Rogers. We got here also a new important character, a boy named Lucas, similar in age to Alice. A large part of the action takes place on the island, where Lucas is shipwrecked for some time, and then the rest of the characters shipwreck. The opponents who want to eat them are creatures called bugs. We also have an interesting novelty here. A large part of the culinary plot is presented in a form stylized as culinary programs in which two teams compete with each other. You have the statesmen to the camera commenting on current events related to cooking, etc. A funny idea. Speed has a lot of cool scenes, because together with John Bob, they are shipwrecked on the island with Alice and Lord Rogers. The pace of release is accelerated. We saved the next 3 films year after year. In 2017, it was The Swan Princess, Royally Undercover, in which the main bad guy is a guy who is an ordinary con artist manipulating others to gain their gold. This time Odette and Derek play some role, but we mainly focus on following the younger actors, Alice and Lucas, supported by Lord Roger. Of course, everything ends well, and the final scene connects with the previous film. The con artist ends up at the Box Island. There I'm very happy about the arrival of a new, food. Speed has his part here, but nothing special. It is less turtle movie than the previous ones. In 2018, we got The Swan Princess, a royal mystery. That's not a typo. In the title, mystery is spelled using the letter Z. This film can be treated as strongly related to the previous one. The plot and the enemy strongly results from that part. Again, we have the Bog Island. As I mentioned 2 films ago, there was a plot staged as a cooking show. This time we have one staged as a courtroom drama. Scully is on a trial. This is also not very turtle part, but there is more of him here than in the previous one. In 2019, we got The Swan Princess, Kingdom of Music, which introduced a number of characters who will play an important role in this and the next film, with the Asian Kathai Empire and the characters originating from there, primarily the 2 royal children, Prince Lee and Princess Mei Lee. You can say that the princess role is a casual retelling of the Swan Princess story, because the emperor does not want her to get involved with the person she fell in love with, so he orders Fang, the court magician, to enchant the boy into a dragon. This film stands out in fact that there are no clearly bad characters here. Of course, you can say that a father who forbids his daughter from happiness with the man she loves is not a good character, but compared to previous films, it is, well, a different scale. No one wants to rule the world, steal all the money, or eat our heroes. In the film, we have 2 main plots. One focuses on Odette and Derek trying to help Mei Lee and her chosen one, and the other one is focused on Prince Lee, who came to the Swan Prince Kingdom for a big music competition. Also important in this plot are Alice, who starts to like the newcomer, and Lucas, who is not happy about it. I was surprised by the final solution. The only way to disenchant Mei Lee's beloved from the dragon form was the Emperor tried to sacrifice his love, but she was unable to do it. But her brother did it, sacrificing his feelings for Alice and stepping aside, giving the possibility for a further relationship between her and Lucas. It was the first film to end with the to be continued information. The turtle aspect of this film is the smallest of all of them so far. He literally has 2 scenes, one in the middle, but he is silent in it. He speaks for the first and only time at the very end. Released in 2020, The Swan Princess, A Royal Wedding is a direct continuation of the previous film. The action takes place in Kathai Empire, and the titular wedding concerns Princess Mei Lee and her chosen one. The initial scenes can be considered a prequel to the previous film, because we see how and why Chen was enchanted into a dragon. However, the action quickly returns to the present and is placed set after the previous film. This time we have a negative character, Fang, who herself has a crush on Chen and wants him for herself. This part is a bit of a return to the roots, in the sense that Alice and Lucas are practically absent here, while Odette and Derek have an important leading role. Speed returns to being a predominant element, taking a large part in the action, as in most previous films. After the 10th film, the break was a bit longer, until 2023, but then we got 2 films. The first one is The Swan Princess, A Fairy Tale is Born. A large part of the film is a prequel to the first part. We learn the story of how Bertha becomes queen, we see how Derek and Odette are born, we see how Derek's father and Odette's mother die, etc. The second part of the film takes place in the present, in the sense that the action is placed after the previous film. Bertha decides to abdicate. The film itself ends with Derek and Odette being crowned as king and queen. This is the second film that has the to be continued info at the end. The turtles' participation is quite standard here. As I mentioned, in the same year we got another, 12th and at the moment the last film in the series, titled The Swan Princess Far Longer Than Forever, which is of course a reference to the main piece of music from the first part. The film focuses on Derek and his learning the truth about his father. But of course we also have a set of other typical characters. First of all, Odette has a big part because she accompanies him most of the time in his investigation. Rod Rogers, Speed, Jean Bob, Puffin and Scully also appear, and even Uberta. The biggest absence is certainly the complete absence of Alice and Lucas. The turtle participation here is quite standard. A lot of scenes and participation in the action. When it comes to the voice actors of the characters, none of the characters appearing in all of the films were dubbed by just one person. The closest to this are Lord Rogers and Speed. The first one was voiced by Mike Harelik in the first film and by Joseph Medrano in the next 11, while Speed's voice in the first part was Stephen Wright, and in the remaining 11 parts parts he spoke with the voice of Doug Stone. The second place among the characters who appeared in all the parts is occupied by Derek, Jean-Bob, and Puffin. Well, it is true for everyone that for the 4th to 12th film they had the same voice actor. For the first 3 everyone has is solved differently. Derek was voiced by someone different in each of the first 3 movies. Howie McCallin, Douglas Sealis, and Brian Nissen. In the remaining parts his voice was Yuri Lovelta, a person with a very cool name. Jean-Bob spoke in the first part with the voice of the best known of all the mentioned people, John Cleese. In parts 2 and 3 he was voiced by Donald Sage McKay. In the remaining 9 he was voiced by Clayton James. Puffin, in turn, spoke in the entire initial trilogy with the voice of Steve Winovich. In the next 9, Gardner Joss gave him his voice. The other 2 characters, both female characters, had it more spread out. Odette was played by 3 actors. In the first 3 parts it was Michelle Nicastro, in the next 4 Laura Bailey, and in the last 5 Nina Herzog. Queen Huberta is played by 4 actresses. In the first part she was voiced by Sandy Duncan. In the second and third film she was voiced by Christy Landers. In the next 6 films, from the 4th to the 9th, she was voiced by Jennifer Miller, and in the last 3 by Catherine Lavin. A few words about merchandise, and of course it existed. It can be divided into 2 categories. The first is the typical merch that we usually discuss, the one that came out in the past together with the premieres of films. These were various things, plushies of course, including one that I have in my collection, depicting Speed. The head is plastic and hard, the rest is a typical plushie, a very unusual combination. We also got things like plastic figurines, Barbie-style dolls, of course books, well, a lot of things. Of course, we also got films on VHS and 10 DVD, as well as related things like soundtracks on cassettes or CDs, or things like VHS cassettes with songs in the sing-along songs version. But in the case of this series, we also have modern things. Swan Princess is not a series that the creators forgot about. On the contrary, it has a lively YouTube channel and a website, about which I say more in the moment. But in the meantime, I will talk about the merch available on the website. And there is a lot of it. Plush toys, of course, but also clothes in the version of normal clothes as well as costume. Odette's dresses, jewelry, pins, Christmas ornaments, blankets, many things. And also some quite unique things. They offer also include a large number of original art cells. Hand-painted animated art cells used in the creation of the first movie. These are not cheap things, but if someone would like to own an original piece of the movie, the page and the channel are alive. For example, due to the anniversary, a drawing competition for a new dress for Odette was held on the page. There are also information of various mobile games related to Swan Princess that have been created over the years, and various other things can be found then, and a lot of them refer directly to videos published on YouTube, in which we have both various memories, behind-the-scenes materials, and completely new short animations. Obviously, I'm mainly interested in turtle content, so the episode Where Heinz Finds from October 2024 was great for me. The host showed what pre-production sketch she found with Turtle Brothers. She tasked that the Speed and Jean-Bob at the initial state were not supposed to be Frog and the Turtle, but 2 turtles. That's all for now. Thank you for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you liked it, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Bye!